from the farms, and we repurpose that because a lot goes to waste. But
Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you. Okay, we are ready to go. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to welcome you to this event. My name is Alois Simhlanga. I'm the Chief of Climate Technology Innovation Unit within UNIDO. First of all, I want to thank our hosts, South Africa, for hosting us in our discussion on this important discussion. And we have a jam-packed kind of program in front of us. But I think the best way to start this conversation is to share with you a video of one of the entrepreneurs that we are working with and that have been supported by this program. Are we able to show the video now?
globally, 1/3 of all food that is produced is lost and wasted, 1/3. And when we zoom into sub-Saharan Africa and we zoom into fruits and vegetables, it's nearly half that doesn't reach the market for consumption, half.
One of the biggest drivers of climate change presently is food loss and food waste. If you want to tackle climate change, you tackle food loss.
So it has such an impact on the economy. And then lastly, food security.
Sometimes the farmers were unable to import their feeds to the market.
One of the key challenges they're constantly facing, which is a driver of food loss, is just not having enough buyers.
Most of the traders and buyers in Kenya, they always go to buy what is good from the farmers, the product of the grade one.
The devastating paradox is that in Kenya specifically, 1 out of 3 Kenyans faces poor nutrition or food insecurity. With Africa's population doubling in 2050, you can imagine the amount of wastage that will just grow. It will become more of a climate hazard. So that's when I realized, okay, this needs to be a sustainable solution, and can we make an actual business model out of this?
We successfully create a market, enough demand for not just the premium grades, grade 1 and grade 2, but also imperfect and surplus.
Farm to Feed is Africa's first online platform that aggregates and repurposes imperfect and surplus produce.
Produce of the smaller size, like the cabbages, the smaller size, they don't buy. But we Farm to Feed, we normally buy those small size.
Our solution is unique and relatively new for the continent in that we are the first to provide a food rescue service at scale. What we're selling is a change in mindset, a change in behavior.
When Farm to Feed came, they have been giving us at an affordable price.
We're women-led. There aren't a lot of startups that are women-led. And I'm really proud of that because in this day and age, I also think it's really, really important to have more women-led companies. In Africa, 80% of farmers are women, yet most of the agricultural companies are led by men.
Farm to Feed have gained trust with the farmers because the farmer, they know even if they go to the farm, they have somewhere to take their produce.
We pay all the dues for the farmers. When a farmer delivers the produce, we'll sort it, we'll grade it, and we'll make the payment.
Balanced diet, and that one has made us retain the children in school. Retention of children in school, because you know sometimes This is the only meal these children get.
They have offered transport, which was the main disasters from the farmers.
They are giving the farmers direct business. And I'm also a farmer of rice.
They have helped a lot of farmers, especially the elderly people.
Farm to Feed is giving us fresh food. Farm to Feed is giving us balanced diet. Farm to Feed is regular and timely.
This is the rescue. It is called rescue because it is small in size, which is not taken to the market but is being taken by Farm to Feed. Same as this one.
Since I joined Farm to Feed, one thing I can say is that I'm able to reduce the food losses to the farmers that they never had markets of their produce.
We were piloting quite a bit in the first year, then started selling, got our revenue up quite quickly, and then knew, okay, we need to formalize this. We started a fundraising. Catalyst Fund was the first to come on board. And it really made a difference on different aspects. We think Catalyst Fund is very much aligned. They're looking for climate solutions, for new climate solutions. So they're willing to take that step with you. So they've been absolutely great for us.
It's very important that we are resourced well in terms of not just funding, but venture building support, as well as opening up networks. We work with some of these really key commercial partners who lead the food industry in Kenya.
I'm very proud of Farm to Feed.
My hope for the future is to have a better Kenya where everybody is fed with good nutrition.
And of course, we'd like to go beyond Kenya and go across Africa.
Thank you so much. That was a video from Claire. My team prepared some high-level talking points, so allow me to go through them. I am particularly honored to be moderating this conversation, especially around the issue of climate change, adaptation, and climate resilience. It is also telling that we are organizing this in the South African Pavilion. It is testament that we have a common and shared vision around how we want to transition to low carbon and climate resilient economies. My own continent, Africa, as the cradle of civilization, is at the epicenter of the climate crisis. The statistics laid bare before us reveal stark realities. Overall, 4 billion people are exposed to climate hazards. I read a recent report where it says that Germany would need around $900 billion for it to be climate resilient. At least 130 million people are at risk of falling into poverty, and over $300 billion is required on an annual basis in emerging markets by 2030. Africa, with 90% of arable farmland relying on rainfall, is on the front line of this battle. Yet, as we confront these challenges, we are not without hope. The continent boasts of a burgeoning digital economy, where over 621 million registered mobile wallets, 70% 3G cellular network coverage, and the rapidly growing adoption of smartphones, which is expected to reach 75% by 2025. The value of Africa's digital economy is projected to be a staggering $712 billion by 2050. Therefore, the digital revolution provides fertile ground for us to innovate and to transform our economies, especially towards climate resilience economies. This session aims to shed light on groundbreaking climate adaptation and resilient tech ventures, offering a platform for investors to share their insights on climate finance and innovation in Africa. In my view, it is a clarion call to action, urging diverse stakeholders to unite, fostering industrial learning, and also accelerate support for impactful ventures. To conclude, let me thank you so much for joining us this session. We are here to discuss what is possible. Solutions to the issue of climate adaptation in Africa comes from you. This is a learning session, so I invite you to to engage and to ensure that this session is interactive and as useful. Allow me, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to invite my colleague, who's also my boss, Jason from the Global Environment Facility. Jason is a climate change specialist at the GEF, and Jason manages a diverse portfolio of climate change investments and is at the forefront of developing partnerships in innovation and private sector engagement in climate change adaptation finance. His experience and dedication contribute significantly to global efforts in addressing climate change. Please, Jason, vous avez la parole. Thank you.
Truth is that Alois is my boss, so thank you. And look, it's really humbling that you're here. It's amazing that you found the space. Thank you to South Africa for a great pavilion, and we're really grateful that you're here for this discussion. Look, I think we all appreciate the scale of the climate crisis and the urgency that we're facing. The general failure of the global community to meet our mitigation targets is driving a dramatically increased need for climate adaptation and resilience action and finance. We're probably also all aware of the scale of the increasing adaptation finance gap. The Adaptation Gap report just came out recently, the most recent one for 2023. The gap is increasing. We're now in the order of magnitude of $200 to $350 billion of financing needs a year for climate adaptation and resilience in developing countries alone. It's actually, I think it's 194 to 384, something like that. So 200 plus billion a year. Where are those funds going to come from? Realistically, where are those funds going to come from? We're here at the COP, of course, speaking a lot and negotiating a lot about finance and about public finance. And yes, we need public finance to increase significantly. And it is. But let's be real. Public finance is a finite resource, if we can put it that way. It can and it will, and it is increasing. But the gap is so large. Right now, between 2 and 3% of all of adaptation finance comes from the private sector, or at least is recognized as coming from the private sector. So 95% is public. This needs to change, and we need to increase both. And the good news is, or the opportunity is that we are seeing an increasing explosion of models and of points of light, of hope. And that's why we're here, to recognize those, to celebrate them, and to help them become bigger, and for you to inspire others, because we need a transformation. We need more funds from the private sector, but it's deeper than that. We need to transform economies, businesses, ecosystems of businesses to focus more on climate resilience and adaptation, because God knows people need to adapt and be more resilient to the onslaught that's increasingly coming. Now, another piece of the good news is our models are increasing. Blended finance for investment vehicles, like Catalyst Fund, SMA incubation and acceleration, we're getting more sophisticated at. Insurance products, the insurance industry is moving. The banking industry is developing lending products focused on adaptation and resilience. The whole movement on disclosure and management of physical climate risks. Moving forward, and I would say really quickly. So this is good, and in a sense, this is how I can look at my children and have some hope. And it's also because of your work and work of many others like you that I have hope. We've learned in the GEF, in the Global Environment Facility, which, as you may know, is a operative body of one of the operative bodies of the UNFCCC finance mechanism, also serves other multiple conventions. We've learned that it's really important to go directly to the innovators, to partner as much as we can with the innovators, with the leaders, on the ground and in finance sectors. We have a little program that I love managing, which is called the Challenge Program for Adaptation Innovation, where we receive ideas directly from the innovators. Thank you so much to you, David, and to BFA Global that powers the Catalyst Fund, and your partnership with UNIDO. Thank you, UNIDO, for coming to us so that we can work with you to help you do more of what you're doing, and especially to help the Catalyst Fund increasingly focus on adaptation and resilience, because we need way more farms to feed. We need you to grow within Africa, beyond just one country. We need you to go beyond, deeper in Uganda and across the continents, and we need plenty of others. I'll come back. I think I'll pause it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason. And from UNIDO, we are a happy partner of the GEF, and we are particularly excited with our work on climate adaptation innovation. We have brought, I think, 3 panelists and then Jason, and we want to have a conversation around why they are in the climate change, climate adaptation innovation space. And I think to begin our conversation, let me introduce David Desser. He's the Chairman and Chief Innovation Officer at BFA Global. And David, may you introduce yourself? Tell us about the Catalyst Fund, and why are you investing in ventures in Africa? What is the opportunity, in Africa?
Thank you, Eloise, and thanks everybody for coming to listen to our rays of hope, or lights, points of light, as Jason was saying. So my name is David Delcer. As Eloise was saying, I am part of BFA Global. I was part of the founding team at Catalyst Fund 8 years ago, when we were at the time focused on fintech. And now I'm co-chair of the CFAR Alliance. CFAR stands for Climate Innovations for Adaptation and Resilience. So I'm very much, I took the whole bottle of pills about climate adaptation. And because we think it's a huge opportunity both for impact, and this we have to believe, but also hopefully for financial returns. And the reason are just the numbers you're talking about, Jason. There's billions of dollars that these economies have to deploy to adapt to climate change. It's not going away. It's going to affect every industry. So it is a mega problem, and if you can crack a piece of the solution set, it could be a mega solution, right? That both creates lots of impact, but also returns for investors. So we think it is a big opportunity, and we think in Africa in particular is a fertile continent for solutions. We think of it as combining supply and demand, right? Is there going to be demand? Well, those numbers are testament to the fact that yes, the economies will have to adjust. Today, they're not ready. There's almost no climate smart products anywhere, so they have to get smart. That's, there's no way about it otherwise. And in Africa is the youngest continent on the planet, and youth brings energy and brings open-mindedness for adopting new solutions. So we think the market will buy a lot of these solutions over the next few years. So that's on the demand side. Now on the supply side, well, that same youth is ready to go and launch, right? New startups on one hand, so there's lots of talent that are excited to become entrepreneurs on one hand. In Africa, we have already seen a big and new innovation ecosystem arise around fintech. When we started Catalyst Fund 8 years ago, inclusive fintech didn't exist as a term. But in 8 years, we've seen billions of dollars go where no venture money had ever gone before, lots of startups, and lots of entrepreneurs and innovators around. So we've seen this happen. Could it happen around climate? Well, we're building on the shoulders of giants now. The fintech ecosystem is in place, right? And so are the technologies, mobile money and other things, right? So we do believe that the key assets, the key ingredients required for an ecosystem to sprout quickly and respond are in place. And therefore, the supply will come and offer enough solutions to the market.
Okay.
So that's...
Thank you, David, and quite appreciate that. As a first question, I think let's pause there and then I'll come back. Claire, tell us, about farm to feed. where is your business today, and where do you see yourself in 5 years? And what would you need for you to be, not only in Kenya, but to be operating across Africa?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and thank you so much for having me and showing the video here today. It's a real honor. Well, yeah, Farm to Feed in a nutshell, I think what you've seen from the video, it's really being the first platform that creates a new market for imperfect and surplus produce. So we all know in sub-Saharan Africa, or well, we don't all know, 50% is lost and wasted, 50%, which is a really crazy statistic, and food that's left to rot releases methane, and methane is 30 times more potent than CO2. So it's a real climate hazard, and we're also using, it's a loss of biodiversity because we're using land to grow food that's never eaten, all of that. So we're creating this marketplace for food rescue, as we call it, but we're also collecting data while we're doing it because we don't actually know why this food is being lost. Is that because of bad quality inputs? Is that because of droughts? Is it because of excessive rains? Is it because of soil degradation? Is it because of lack of market? Is it lack of knowledge? Is it wrong planting season? There's so many factors that go into creating this perfect looking cabbage. And I think that data that we're collecting, that will actually drive the transformation of a sustainable food system that's circular, where nothing goes to waste. In the end, that's where we need to go. So where we are now, we just launched the first version of our digital platform where it's end-to-end. Farmers can come on board. We have 6,000 farmers on the platform. We're already collecting data from them. And we have an e-commerce website because we want to make it super, super easy for customers to source sustainably, right? Because we need to make it easy for customers because everyone wants to be sustainable. But at the moment, I personally think it's really difficult to consume sustainably. If I go into supermarket, everything is plastic. So I think it's really for startups and innovators to make it easy for the consumer and for businesses to become sustainable because those are the barriers, I think, for climate transition. So that's where we are in 5 years. Obviously, hopefully we'll be in 2 or 3 countries doing the same thing. We'll be manufacturing certain products from, really, really big.
Claire, only 2, 3 countries? I mean
yeah, hopefully across 5 years, 12. But also hopefully, with the data that we're collecting, we know that in this value chain, there's so much loss of this season that we've provided other solutions for those type of products that are constantly broken. For example, our #1 product is broken carrots, and there's so much we can do with it. And at the moment, it's not going to a consumer.
And what would you need from policy, financing? What would you need to get to this bigger picture?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think every entrepreneur will say funding, but behind funding is actually 3 key things. It's talent. We don't have time, so I need talent and experience. And this is really what I always say to Catalyst Fund is where they really came in, because I can't do it all myself, and they have a team ready who has experience across all different kinds of innovations, and they just come in, they do the job, and they're out. And I think that kind of acceleration is super powerful, right? Because as an entrepreneur, you don't want to, if I hire someone to do marketing, that person has to come in. Catalyst Fund is just ready to step in from step 1. So I think that kind of talent and expertise and acceleration, because we don't have time, so it has to be quick. And that kind of setup really works. And it's support, so it's really, we can't do this alone, so it's really in the power of partnerships. So we need partnerships, we need big off-takers, we need big food productions, we need manufacturers, and we need people who are already aggregating farmers that we can tap into, because I don't feel that we're going to build everything ourselves. And lastly, I think what's really will catalyze things is that I have so many conversations, and then I'll stop talking. I have so many conversations, and that climate investing is pioneering. And often when I speak to investors or financiers, they always ask me, where has this worked? But a climate innovation is new. That's why we're climate innovators. They don't exist. They don't necessarily solve a problem for a consumer necessarily. They're solving a problem for climate. So asking the question of where has this happened, investors also have to be entrepreneurial, and they have to take the risk, because often investors are a little bit risk averse. That is the tendency of being an investor as well. But I think in climate, you have to be the pioneer, the investor and the entrepreneur. I'll pause there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Claire. How much time did you take? You said 6,000 farmers are on your platform now. How long did it take you to have 6,000 farmers on your platform? For my information.
In 2 years. In 2 years.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Let me go to my Joseph from Uganda. May you talk to us about your business, which is in agro supply. How are you feeling the critical gaps to enable climate resilience in in Uganda? And where are you with your business? And where do you see yourself in 5 years? What is required?
Okay, thank you so much. My name has already been said, and I'm so glad to be here. What we do at AgroSupply is that we collect different varieties of seeds, and we test them to make sure that they're resilient to different climate conditions where smaller farmers are best. And we are mostly doing cereal crops. And then we distribute those varieties to smaller farmers. We're currently working with 26,000 smaller farmers in Uganda. We provide them with knowledge digitally, and we have also started testing what we call yield index insurance to cover farmers in case something goes wrong, because even though these variety that we're distributing are climate resilient, there are also certain things that comes around, like for example, in 2021, we supplied about 15,000 smaller farmers, and everything was going on very well. Then all of a sudden, fall armyworm, African armyworm, something called African armyworm, came from nowhere and ate all farmers' crop. Almost 65% of our farmers lost their crop, and there was nothing that we could do about it. That is not climate related. Okay, it might be climate related because when there's a lot of rain, smaller farmers don't experience a lot of things like fall armyworm, African armyworm, but there was prolonged drought. So those insects started coming and eating farmers' crop and so on. So we have started testing what we call yield index insurance to try and cover farmers in case something beyond climate conditions comes up. I think as someone who works with different companies across Africa, we have some seed companies based in Zimbabwe, we have others based in Zambia, we have others based in Kenya. One of the things that I would want to see is people say that Africa has free trade agreement, but I would want to disagree. We get a lot of challenges. Like, for instance, Kenya is a 12 hours drive from Uganda. Actually, not 12 hours. I would drive from Uganda, capital of Uganda, to Kenya in 4 hours. But I cannot pay someone who is in Kenya using Uganda shilling. I have to either pay them in US dollar or I have to pay them in Kenya shilling. That's your blocking trade between two countries and between entrepreneurs. And it makes life very hard because if I am to convert Uganda shilling and send to someone in Kenya in US dollar, that means that there's a lot of depreciation happening. So we lose a lot of money. So what I would want to see is policymakers actually come up and implement policies that support climate innovators like ourselves. If you look at the road infrastructure in different countries, not the same. It's the same everywhere. In Kenya, we get issues of truck drivers getting stuck. In Zambia, when they're coming, they have issues of getting stuck. In Tanzania, so those are some of the things that that innovators like government need to work on. They need to make sure that they work on infrastructure policies so that we innovators can be able to transact with other countries. I can transact with a country like Kenya, I can transact with Tanzania without having any problem. Where do we want to see ourselves in 5 years? We gave ourselves a target of working with 1 million smaller farmers in Uganda. In Uganda, we have over 30 million farmers, and out of that, 26 million are smaller farmers. So that means that there's a large chunk of farmers in Uganda that are being affected by climate change. So before we go to another country, we need to make sure that we're solving the right problem by having 1 million smaller farmers in Uganda. And currently, we only have 26,163 smaller farmers that we're working with. And we have also taken time to invest in women because as AgroSupply, we have a mission that says that we want to fight hunger and poverty. And if you want to fight hunger and poverty, that means that you need to work with women. So out of 26,000, 45.2% of our customers are women. So we work very closely with women farmers to help not only them grow crop for money making, but also be able to feed their family. I always tell smaller farmers that you cannot feed her mouth when you're going hungry every day. That means that you're not going to be able to support other people. As Africa need food, themselves, smaller farmers also need to be able to eat. I grew up in a smaller farmers family. My parents were smaller farmers. And sometime every day I would wake up and go to the farm and come and eat afterward. And that was the only food we would eat for a day. Like the whole day I'm like, so I always ask my father, why do you always grow maize if we cannot eat 3 times a day and you're always selling it? Because he was always having maize, but us ourselves, we're always eating 1 time a day. So we're not only trying to work and say, you know what, we're increasing the income of smaller farmers, but we also want farmers to be able to support themselves. I think that's about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Jason, you want to come in? Feel free to jump in at any stage. David, you have invested in 16 companies in Africa. Africa is getting to 1 billion people, right?
Good.
Then the question that I have for you is, from where you sit, what are the challenges limiting tech innovation on the continent? And when will it take you to, how much time is going to take you to invest in 160,000, 1.6 million companies in Africa?
That we could do yesterday. No, I'm joking. What we think that is very obvious when you talk about what is the barrier to innovation. Claire just mentioned it. Well, what is the funding, right? The funding, is it coming? When you go talk to the investor, they say, well, what is the pipeline? Because I have the money here, but who can absorb my $5 million check? So I think what we have at the core of it is a problem of going back to before supply and demand not meeting. And in our perspective, that's due to a few other reasons, right? A few deeper reasons. First, there's not yet, unfortunately, we're working on it, but there's not yet success clearly out of the park success stories on adaptation where you can say, okay, this company is creating a new category. This is going to be copied and pasted all over the continent, or they're going to scale because they're clearly solving a problem really well and scaling rapidly. Just think of AI. A year ago, no one really was talking that much about AI. ChatGPT shows up. OpenAI had been around for 6 or 7 years already. They developed this product, boom, it takes off, and now that's all we can talk about, right? So we need the OpenAIs, if you wish, of climate adaptation and resilience to rise so we can identify what really works and then invest in them. Yes. That will make the investors less risk averse because now they know it works, right? But for that to happen, we need a few other things. We need some of that money, some of those investors reaching down deeper into the earlier stages and funding companies like yours that are getting going to give them the possibility to become a big champion, right? So we need more accelerators. We need more organizations, perhaps like Catalyst Fund, that can deploy money and skills because, as we heard, those are needed. So we need more of those connectors. The ecosystem is still very nascent, so we need to, all of us, connect with more people, invite them into this type of activity because we think is both, again, impactful and promising in terms of returns.
Thank you, David. Yeah. You talked about more accelerators, more incubators, and my boss got excited. Jason, do you want to come in here?
I did. I got excited when you started talking about this matchmaking, David, because I like to call this the missing middle. On the one hand, we have great enterprises doing great work that the world needs them to scale up because of the impact you're having. At the same time, you're right, David, talk to investors in not just in the climate adaptation space, but especially also in the biodiversity or nature space, and they'll tell you, my biggest problem is pipeline. My biggest problem is businesses to invest in. Mm-hmm. So there's a missing middle. And they'll say, yeah, there's lots of great ideas, but they're not yet investable to me. They don't have certain ingredients that I need. I need a strong business case. They need also the expertise, and so that they're a safe investment for private capital. So I think there's two things that we can collectively do to address this missing middle. One is there's a continuum of incubation. So this pre-seed, if we can call it that, early stage innovation, we need to link that to the larger scale investors. And the larger scale investors are out there looking for a pipeline. So for example, the Craft project, the first equity investment fund powered by the Lightsmith Group, investing in adaptation-oriented SMEs in developing country contexts. The Jeff put in 1 million. It's now catalyzed at over 200, capitalized, sorry, at over 200 million. There's money out there looking for, we need to link those, and we need to make sure that the investments are ready, or the businesses are ready for a larger scale influx. Second, we need to use precious public funds to do the de-risking that you were talking about, and blend that, yes, with the larger investment funds, to let the larger investment funds take more risk. It's a new space, investing in adaptation and resilience and in nature and in ecosystems. It's a new tricky space. So we can reduce some of that risk, plus in, in Africa and in different parts of the world. So political risk, so we can use precious public funds to de-risk and then crowd in private investors in these crucial businesses that are driving adaptation impacts.
Okay, please go ahead. Yes.
You used a term that is very needed, de-risking, and we tend to think of de-risking the investor. I would like us to think about how do we de-risk the entrepreneurs? Because we're asking them to spin up a company, grow it when there's no funds, and do it please by 2030 because we have our SDGs to meet. So how do we de-risk them, right? That would be a question I asked to the audience.
Okay. Thank you. I think we are 25 minutes to go. The question with David is how do we de-risk entrepreneurs? We tend to de-risk investors. Please feel free to, if you have any question or if you want to be part of this conversation, feel free to raise your hand and jump in. Claire, you wanted to react to that?
As what Jason said, it sounds so familiar from the conversations I'm having with other founders and with investors as well. It's exactly that. I want to try out this, right? So, for example, I can say an example. We see amounts of tomatoes and potatoes coming into the warehouse that's there's nothing we can do about it. So, but we have many ideas. So we are looking for those we call them de-risking grants, right? So that we can do R&D because an investor. So it sounds so familiar to have de-risking grants that can de-risk a certain part of your business because we have our core business, but we want to lay on top of those things and try out new things. So it's money to pivot, and maybe you've seen the same. You need that money to try out this new thing you're testing. So having de-risking grants really helps. You don't have to de-risk the entire business, but parts of the business. Yeah.
Thank you, Claire. Any questions, please? Is the mic on? Okay.
So the data we're collecting is from farmers. So we have a platform. We're also looking into carbon credits. So we're setting an entire baseline study. So everything that we are rescuing is certifiable. It's a new methodology that just came out 2 months ago. We've already done the de-risking because we got de-risking grant from GEF. So we're de-risking the carbon credits as well, right? Because that's sort of a risky business. So the baseline study, so we're collecting data from the farmers. Every time they put things on the platform, we know what kind of produce it is, what the imperfections were, why they were imperfect, what season, what price, all of those things.
First of all, thank you for the topic that's going now. Very interesting because we work in a similar space. I'm from Indalo Inclusive South Africa, and we support enterprises basically in the climate sector. So you spoke about that there's usually funders who are available, investors available, but the main thing is that there's no pipeline. And I think, just speaking from a South African perspective, that's what we've also found, that sometimes you have, funders available to support entrepreneurs, but the pipeline is not, ready. So I was wondering, currently, what kind of model are you using, like for the pipeline? That's my first question. And then the second one is just about replication. I mean, at a local level, we do implement replication, locally, and it works very well, especially if you are having the graduation model as well, where you support enterprises within an incubation from like more startup level, growth, and then going to acceleration. Then you find that that circle, when it comes back, it works quite nicely, but you just have to have that, replicator, and also the originator, the person who started the business first, ready to kind of provide mentorship to the other. And it works at a local level. I don't know if, in other countries it's something that actually works. Yeah, thank you.
So I heard the question, assuming it was for me on the pipeline, and connecting it to a question you were asking me before. What would Catalyst Fund need to invest in 1,000 startups, right? Obviously, we would need more. 16,000, okay. We would need, obviously, a lot more money and a lot bigger team, but we would also need more pipeline. We are finding extraordinary organizations, as you're seeing here, but let me tell you, it's hard. There are not that many. So connecting that to your question about the pipeline, what can we do? Since we are in a rush, unfortunately, because we didn't mitigate fast enough, one thing we're doing, this is not Catalyst Fund per se, it's a sister of Catalyst Fund we call TECA. It's called Trigger and Exponential Climate Action. It's essentially starting from the beginning. Go find innovators who are excited to launch, maybe don't have an idea yet, maybe don't have a co-founder, but they're really well-talented, they have what it takes. Go get them together and challenge them. Why don't you find a co-founder and we'll fund you? We think we need to create companies from scratch. And we think this can be done through this venture launching model. We could be creating hundreds of startups per year across Africa and beyond, with not those many resources. So I think we need to we cannot just wait for startups to pop up spontaneously in the wild, if you wish, because we are in a rush. And we also need a lot more intermediaries, by the way, to connect all the continuum from those big checks you were talking about, like Lightsmith, $200 million, and all the steps before that.
I hear a lot of intentionality, creating companies with intention. To the colleagues, in the room, there's an open question which is for participants, and it reads as follows. What could stakeholders in the room do to spur deeper innovation and growth in climate adaptation and resilience in Africa? Some of you are from the government, some of you from incubators, some of you are from accelerators. What can we collectively do, or what part can you play in supporting innovation and supporting entrepreneurs at scale?
Thank you very much. I'm Duduzile Sbiya from Mpumalanga province in South Africa. I think the colleagues mentioned a lot about policy development, especially on the trade and marketing. That if that one is lacking, somehow the farmers can work very hard and then to have their produce. But if collectively the policy element is lacking behind, you might find that it becomes a barrier and a stumbling block to initiate new kind of innovation and emerging sector. As you have said, that climate adaptation is a new element, but therefore I think the policies and the leadership needs to move into that direction to unpack it and to loosen up that kind of an element.
Hi, I'm Andy Kerr from Climate Kick. I guess to partly answer your question about how do you de-risk entrepreneurs, I guess the model that we have always had, which is that first of all, you need to build those innovation ecosystems so you actually give entrepreneurs the support and the peer learning that comes from being in an ecosystem. And then, to your point, we need to then build the marketplaces to generate demand, because without that, you will never create that sort of learning to scaling. And I suppose our approach is always that this is a systemic problem, and you can never solve it individually. You actually have to bring in the learning, the capability, the policy, the funding, the finance, and the people around particular challenges within particular places. And I suppose my question here is, there's a lot of people agree with that in principle, but making it happen in practice is very difficult. And I guess that's, well, obviously the work. If there was one or two things that were just stopping us now making that happen, because we see a lot of public money coming into that space, we're not yet seeing a lot of private money coming in. How do we actually enable that, which is more than just de-risking the investor? It is about creating the market and creating a very clear, tangible thing that we are doing. So maybe a question to you as well.
Okay, thank you. Queuing from where my sister stopped there, when policies and regulatory environments are better off, I think the next stage we basically need to consider in assisting the entrepreneurs is where we see we can create awareness raising to tell them about the benefits and opportunities that exist when they adopt, climate resilience things, and also engage in effective capacity building drive that can assist them really be able to design and deploy those climate technologies as required. Thank you.
Back, is it on? There it is. Thank you for the opportunity to provide feedback. I think something must be said for, you guys can consider maybe, and this is going to sound crazy, but lowering the bar. South Africa has 4 million, I think, youth NEETs, which is not employed or in educational training. If you go up to them and say, hey, can you solve one of our nation's issues? They're just going to be completely abject and think like, this isn't a space for me. If you approach them and say, can you solve an issue in your immediate community, and we'll give you a grant of 500 Rand a month to just try. For less than 10 million Rand a year, you can have thousands of youth trying to solve issues that are in front of them and feel like they're making a difference and actually have access to the space. And then I'm sure you'll get one or two that you can take further. Thanks.
Great. The last three comments or reflections have really inspired some thinking. We're really glad you're here. It's great that you're here. The gentleman from Sierra Leone, you mentioned awareness, and I really think this is fundamental. It relates to what the other gentleman just said. I think that to really unlock the power of entrepreneurship and innovation for climate adaptation and resilience, we need to be a little more sophisticated and conscious of the business of adaptation and resilience. I would say there's not an entrepreneur out there that would tell you that they have an adaptation business, that they're an adaptation entrepreneur. They're solving people's problems, people issues, providing a service or a product that somebody's going to buy. So we need to understand what are the motivations of businesses, big and small, for investing in adaptation or for doing what I would call an adaptation business because of my job, but what they would call something else. Three things, I think. In my mind, there are three motivations for businesses getting into the business of adaptation and resilience. One is supply chain resilience. So big businesses really have supply chain risks. Climate impacts are a big driver of supply chain resilience. So they want to invest in their supply chains, and that provides opportunities for local producers. So the whole supply value chain, that's one. The second is The climate crisis drives new business opportunities, new opportunities for new products. If I were in the business of drip irrigation systems, I would see a growth market. You know, somebody mentioned artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, there's the early warning systems. If I were in early warning system software, this is a growth industry. We should go invest in that. The third one is investors. Smart investors will go to these growing economies. So these are the type of motivations we need to break down, we need to understand, and people like me need to speak the language, and we need to learn about speaking the language of business, so that we're not forcing you to talk about adaptation and resilience, but we're speaking a language that matters to business and to investors.
Thank you. Joseph, want to come in?
Yeah. So I wanted to say something about his question. He said something about lowering the bar for entrepreneurs, giving entrepreneurs money, or going somewhere looking for someone and giving them money and try, can you solve a problem in your community? If I am to reflect back on my journey of starting a company, I think when I started AgroSupply in 2017, I knew I had the experience because I studied agriculture at the university. I did agricultural science, so that means I know what is called a drought-resilient variety of seed and what is called an open-pollinated variety of seed. But as a business person, I didn't know how to start a business. I didn't know how to run a business, how to manage a company, how to manage money. So what people need is not money immediately to start a company. People need knowledge. Young people need to have knowledge that if you start a company, you're going to have 1, 2, 3 people that you need to manage. How do you manage growth? How do you manage cash? Because money can become a problem if it's in the wrong hand as well. You cannot give someone 500 rand or 100,000 US dollars that please start an idea. There are so many people who are rich in this world and their children cannot start businesses or take over their businesses because they did not extend that knowledge to their children on how to run a company, but at least given them the knowledge of how to spend the money. Spending money is different from running a business. So I think what we should do is we should give as many young people as possible knowledge on how to run businesses. I went through 4 different accelerators before getting our first check, which was from Tony Lumelo Foundation, and only 5,000 US dollars to be able to run AgroSupply. I decided to go through 5 different accelerators, how to manage a team, how to scale, how to manage business, how to solve a problem that we already even know, and all those kind of things. And then definitely, eventually, we started getting money to run a company.
It's not about the money, it's about the skills.
I completely agree with what you're saying. So I come from a background of a technology company, a large technology company. And from research, we found that most organizations in the sort of climate adaptation space are SMEs. They're quite small organizations and they're startups. So the knowledge is really key. The second is capital and finance is important actually in terms of being able to enable them to invest in different markets in different areas. And one way of doing that I've found is by collaborating with these larger organizations, because actually we know we can't just rely on governments and we can't rely on finances from public sector. So there is need for new innovative models on how to generate and raise capital. And from a technology perspective, what I'm struggling with is the ability to collaborate with smaller organizations. And maybe this is where UNIDO and other organizations can actually play a role in facilitating those introductions for us. So yeah, that's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
I'll be brief, Luis, thank you. You were talking about before the science of agriculture, and to the gentleman's question about 10,000 entrepreneurs, there is also a science of entrepreneurship. We've been learning how to better launch startups in this new world with technologies like the ones we have. And I'll just give you a data point. About 10 years ago, when Y Combinator started really getting big, there were around 400 accelerators across the world, identified as such. Now, 10 years later, there's 40,000. That's why you went through 5. 10 years ago, there were almost none, or very, very few in Africa. That's a model the science of entrepreneurship developed, and we've deployed it massively. We think there's other models. Catalyst Funds model is a little different. It's very, very hands-on. Half of our support comes as cash and half as technical assistance or venture building. That's a kind of a spin-off on the traditional model. The venture launcher model that I was discussing before, there are only a handful of them in the world, but I can predict, this is my wild prediction, there will be thousands of them in the future because it helps. It helps give many, many people a chance to get going, at low cost per person, and those that do find it good, those that have or learn quickly and learn how to manage money and people and goals and investors, then they can progress towards other steps. So I think we are getting better at launching startups and sustaining them, thankfully, because we need them. We need that skill.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We are 4 minutes up to the top of the hour. Is it okay, Jason, if I invite you to sort of wrap this up? Or you wanted to come in from interesting thoughts and then wrap it up, please.
David challenged us at the beginning and said, yeah, we need, on the point of we need to, yes, de-risk investments and de-risk investors. We also need to de-risk entrepreneurs. You're right. I like that term. We need to do that much more purposefully and much more effectively. We have a lot of potential. You articulated really well 2 key needs. Yes, it's about investment, and it's also about the know-how and the skills. So on this continuation of innovation, we need Catalyst Fund type initiatives. We need Catalyst Fund to grow, and we need others like Catalyst Fund and other sectors to move ideas to initial businesses that can get large-scale investment. We also need, yes, to de-risk investment so it can take a chance on your business to grow, as you articulated, across multiple countries at that scale. So we need to use precious public funds, which is growing, but it's not going to be exponential growth. Let's be real. Double, triple, quadruple. We need to use that precious public funds to catalyze the much broader economy and the private sector in all its diversity, in all its forms, large and small. I have some hope, though. In COP25, maybe even in COP20, certainly in COP25, so just about 3 years ago, the talk in the forums was, no, adaptation, that's a public thing. That's, no, business and adaptation, no, that doesn't really mix. We've come a long way. We've come a long way. We are moving as a community, but we need to do it much faster and much louder, building much more awareness of the understanding of what the business of climate adaptation and resilience is. And this is a learning by doing effort. This is why I'm so glad that the Jeff and UNIDO is working together with Climate Kick on a learning initiative around innovation and private sector investment and adaptation. And I have one, I'd like to close with a plea, with a suggestion, with a request. There are multilateral public funds very actively funding projects across many countries for adaptation and resilience. We would love to fund more activities like this, but the business model and the reality of the way that these multilateral funds work, I can speak for the Jeff, is that we receive projects. They come to us. Please do what you can to have these sorts of ideas, de-risking of the entrepreneur in the projects that come to us. Because the Jeff doesn't simply fund what it wants to tomorrow. There's a whole process to generate the ideas to come to us. So it's a challenge to work as a community to have more funds in this space for the business of adaptation and resilience.
Thank you so much, Jason. And ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of this session. Few takeaways that I have, in addition to what Jason mentioned. Skills. It's about building a tsunami of entrepreneurs on climate adaptation innovation. My colleague from South Africa, we actually tried to have a hackathon on biogas with University of Venda just this year, I think 6 months ago. We were impressed by the kind of entrepreneurs budding entrepreneurs that brought together people who have an accountancy background, an engineering background, a social background, to try to solve issues around biogas. So we can work together to create this, as many entrepreneurs as possible around climate adaptation. It's about partnerships, partnership with policymakers, investors, entrepreneurs, big industries, and financiers. It's also about intentionality in policy. If you look at adaptation, if you go to any policy on agriculture in any country, does it mention anybody to do with entrepreneurs? No. If you look at any policy on water, water is going to be an issue. Does it mention anything about entrepreneurs? No. So we need to start to create spaces where we can link policies, policies across all these sectors, so that we can you can create, I think, an interesting space where entrepreneurs can start developing solutions that not only talk to water, but water to energy. I mean, water to energy, but also to food systems, because that's where climate adaptation innovation starts to happen. And I think I was impressed by the work that my sister from Indlalo is doing. I'm more than happy to have a bilateral with her. Thank you so much. This was a starting of a conversation. Please, I invite you to clap hands for our panelists. Thank you. And I wish you a good afternoon. Thank you so much.